Let's just jump right into one of the absolute most fascinating, high-stakes geopolitical chess matches of our time, the relationship between the United States and China. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how Beijing is navigating its super complex, often turbulent dynamic with Washington. And specifically, we're looking at how they are strategizing for the long haul.
So, to really get this strategy, we kind of have to look through Beijing's eyes and see how they view the current global landscape. China's president, Xi Jinping, frequently points out that the world is undergoing changes not seen in 100 years. Essentially, Beijing sees this massive, historic shift happening in the global order. But, the source material notes a pretty fantastic irony here. While Xi observes these historic changes, the catalyst that unexpectedly delivered them and challenged an order that China views as way too US-dominated, well, that catalyst has actually been Donald Trump. Which brings us to Section 1, the clash of opposites.
It is honestly hard to picture two leaders with more fundamentally different approaches to, well, everything. On one side, you have Donald Trump. He is viewed by Chinese policymakers as brash, impulsive, and highly transactional, right? He's a pragmatic dealmaker who loves to play the Twitter game. Then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Xi Jinping. He is guarded, highly methodical, and meticulously plays the long game. Getting a handle on the stark contrast is absolutely crucial if we want to understand how they react to each other on the world stage.
And because of Trump's deeply unpredictable nature, Chinese policymakers have started to realize something. He makes a whole lot of threats, but he doesn't necessarily execute all of them. In fact, Chinese internet culture actually coined a pretty funny new acronym for it. It's TACO. Yep, TACO. It stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. Now, humor aside, it really reflects a growing perception in China, and honestly among some markets too, that a lot of these sudden threats are just quietly forgotten, which totally changes how Beijing calculates its responses.
Moving right along to Section 2, Rethinking the Trade War.
Okay, let's rewind a bit to that first trade war, because China was actually caught pretty off guard. I mean, it was launched just months after Trump got this lavish red carpet welcome in Beijing. But the result of that shock was a massive strategic pivot. Over in China, Trump actually earned this highly ironic nickname, Chuanjian Go, which translates to Trump the Nation Builder. Now, they don't mean he's building up the US. It means his tariffs and trade policies unintentionally forced China to become way more self-reliant. He effectively helped motivate them to build a much more resilient superpower infrastructure.
And we can see the results of that resilience right there in the data. $1.2 trillion. Last year, China's exports to the US fell by a massive 20% due to all these trade tensions. You'd think that would just completely cripple their economy, right? But in the end, China actually hit a record-breaking global trade surplus of $1.2 trillion. So how on earth did they pull that off?
Well, they basically rewired their trade flows. China deliberately countered the US tariffs by aggressively diversifying its consumer base across the entire globe. While exports to the US were dropping, look at this. Exports to India jumped 12.8%. To Southeast Asia, they rose 13.5%. And to the EU, they were up 8.4%. The big takeaway here is that China learned a hard lesson. Dependence on the US is dangerous. So they just pivoted their goods elsewhere.
This leads us right into Section 3, playing the Trump card. While the US was swinging hard with tariffs, China had a serious counterpunch waiting. Think about iPhones, electric vehicles, fighter jets, missiles. What do all these things have in common? They absolutely 100% rely on rare earth minerals and magnets. And China knew this. They imposed explicit export controls on 7 types of these minerals, which directly inflicted pain on the US manufacturing base and, crucially, high-tech military supply chains.
And when we talk about China's dominance here, it's honestly devastating. They control over 60% of all rare earth mining on the planet and a mind-blowing 90% of the refining process. Because of China's super low labor costs and pretty lax environmental standards, the rest of the world practically just gave up on the industry. So while the total market cap for rare earths is actually relatively small in the grand scheme of things, the strategic chokehold China has over the global supply chain is absolutely massive.
But it's not all smooth sailing. Section 4, cracks in China's economy.
Here's the plot twist. Despite winning some of these trade battles, Beijing recently set a GDP growth target of just 4.5% to 5% for the year. Now, by Western standards, that might sound pretty good, but for China, this is historically low. In fact, it's their lowest growth target since 1991. The economic engine that has literally roared for decades is quietly buckling under the surface.
And that pain,
It's coming from some deep structural issues. Local governments, real estate developers, the manufacturing sector, they have all simply borrowed way too much money. And they've used those funds to build immense overcapacity. We're talking about steel mills churning out more than anyone could ever need, literal bridges to nowhere, and sprawling ghost towns of entirely empty properties. All of this excessive debt and overcapacity has saddled China with a very serious deflation problem.
And of course, there's a very real human cost to these structural cracks. For the first time on record, China's fixed asset investment actually declined. The domestic economy is struggling so hard right now that everyday Chinese workers are facing pay cuts, massive layoffs, and they're being forced into a really unstable gig economy that offers zero job security. Honestly, at this point, it's really just their booming export sector keeping the whole ship afloat.
Let's zoom out a bit for Section 5, the global hedging game. Because things are so slow and deflated at home, China is effectively exporting that deflation overseas. Whatever they can't sell to the US, they are just dumping into Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe. And here's another fascinating dynamic. While China loves using its economic strength to buy political influence, they absolutely refuse to get entangled in military conflicts far from home. Nations like Venezuela and Iran might look at China as an ally, but Beijing has made it crystal clear. They are not putting troops on the ground to defend them.
And Beijing maintains that distance for a very cold, calculated reason. Sure, for Iran and Venezuela, China is their ultimate economic lifeline. But let's look at it from China's side. Iran accounts for about 13 to 14% of China's oil imports, and Venezuela, just 4%. It's not a tiny amount, but from Beijing's highly pragmatic perspective, those supplies are ultimately replaceable. China's loyalty has strict limits, especially when it comes to risking its own stability. The actual nightmare scenario for China isn't about defending a specific friend. It's about a disruption to global trade routes. Take the Strait of Hormuz, for example. It carries 20% of the world's gas and oil flows. If a broader conflict closes that strait, China suddenly has a massive crisis sourcing nearly half of its total oil imports. A war there threatens huge inflation and a global recession, things that directly, existentially threaten China's economic interests and its entire export-reliant survival strategy.
So stepping back to look at the whole board, we have to be objective about the current balance of power. The United States still remains the world's biggest economy, and it possesses the world's most powerful military, period. Now, China is undeniably an economic powerhouse, and they've successfully played the long game to outmaneuver tariffs and lock down vital supply chains. But, as the source material makes clear, despite all of this progress, China is still not quite the outright equal of the United States.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important question. As we look toward the future, hedging is going to be the absolute keyword. We have two flawed superpowers, one unpredictable and transactional, the other methodical but dealing with severe domestic fractures, colliding in this historic rivalry. So who will the nations caught in the middle choose to hedge with in 2026 and 2027? Both sides really want the rest of the world to pick a side, but as the data shows us, no one really wants to.